So the last talk is for the most difficult question in the room. How do we get fired up for peace? And I know at a time like this, where the news every day is making us so depressed, my job here is to share a little bit of what I've learned by doing Ahimsa conversations. I've done 134 conversations with people from 25 countries. And it's not a platform for, promoting nonviolence. It's really a space for thinking through very calmly what is this dynamic between violence and nonviolence. So, the first thing I've learned through this process is that violence is not a binary, it's not a coin, with a violence on one side and nonviolence on the other side. It's a spectrum. And I'll illustrate by giving you a story. So let's call him Mr. X. I don't want to tell you his name. He's a good friend of mine. And like many of us, he had an incident in the traffic. Somebody almost, scraped his car. He got very angry. Chee karke he went, blocked the other guy's car. Then he slammed out of his car, how we do it, gusse mein, and started as marching towards the other guy because that guy was blocked. He had to also stop. That guy's getting nervous. Ab ye main pita aaj. This guy's going to beat me up. And my friend Mr. X says, somewhere between that, when he got out of his car and he was almost reaching that guy who was just what? He would have been about 10, 20 feet behind him. Something happened. He still doesn't know what it was. Poof, karke his whole anger just evaporated and he said, I found myself touching that 5 feet, doing namaste and walking away. I think Mr. X's best reward in this whole incident was ke the look on that guy's face, kya confused kiya. So I'm saying that all of us are on this spectrum. I am also. Now the second point is, it's also embedded in this story. It's a quote actually from Isaac Asimov, the science fiction writer. Violence is the last resort of the incompetent. I hope you will agree that my friend, somewhere in those 3 seconds between, his slamming out of his car and marching back to that guy, somewhere in those 3 seconds, he rose to a higher level of competence. Now, the problem with the larger world. This is all fine, right? In everyday life, we are all facing these situations. We handle them in different ways. We all know it's better to shake hands and, not get into a dishum, all that. Okay, we all do that. But what about this world we are living in? So much of the news around you gives you the feeling that we are like this only. Nasty, brutish, violent species we are. I'm very disturbed. There are a lot of the young people in my life. I mean, younger than you also, teenagers are saying we are a horrible species. We deserve to self destruct. So I just want to present some other views on that or some information. Margaret Mead, the famous anthropologist, was once asked, what is the earliest, what is the very first artifact of human civilization? She didn't say wheel. She didn't say any stone tool. She pointed to a human skeleton about 15,000 years old, in which the femur bone, which is this biggest bone in the human body, had broken and then healed, and the person had lived longer. Now, this happened at a time when our ancestors were like other herds. If you couldn't keep up with the herd, you were left behind and you died. So, Margaret Mead's point was that this skeleton shows that we began at some point to stop for the ones who fell. The point is that this idea has been absorbed by humankind at many levels. There's no shortage of characters in history and in our present who will say civilization is not technology. Civilization begins when we stop for the ones who fall. But again, I mean, this is a a back and forth between good news and bad news. Because the bad news I've given you is that conflict is inevitable, but violence is not, right? That's what I'm trying to build a case for. But we have a doomsday clock. We are the first human beings who have invented a doomsday clock. It's a metaphor. It's maintained by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. It was first created in 1947. And at that time, it was some 7 minutes to midnight. Midnight is a symbolic way of saying khalas. Vaat lag gayi. Khatam ho gaya khel. Game over. Midnight is a metaphor for that. And when they first began, they only looked at atomic threat, the threat of atomic weapons. Now they are including climate chaos and the threats from AI. And currently, I mean, thankfully, they don't do weekly and monthly updates. Otherwise, we would be in a really bad state. In January this year, the clock stood at 85 seconds to midnight. Okay. I mean, there has been mass killing before also. Aisa nahi hai. Genghis Khan killed millions and millions of people, and we know what happened in the Americas and all that. But in the 20th century alone, well, actually 20th century and up to 2025, an estimated 200 million people have been killed, either in wars or hate-driven genocides or state repression. A lot of people have been killed by their own governments and man-made famines. So then you will say, okay, what is the worth of this Margaret Mead story? Well, the good news is that a lot of research has been brought together. It was done in the mid-80s by UNESCO. They assembled some 25 scientists from across the world, natural and social scientists. And these scientists looked at a vast volume of research in multiple disciplines, and they came to the fundamental conclusion that, of course, we are capable of violence. If we were not capable of violence as a species, we wouldn't have survived, right? The saber-toothed tiger or somebody would have got us. I mean, our ancestors. But we did survive. So we did learn how to use violence. But this research is showing that our ability to build society came out of our capacity to cooperate and find different ways of mutual creativity. That is the secret of the Homo sapien. Sapien means thinking being. Manushya, our Sanskrit word, Manushya also means thinking being. And I kind of wrap up with two stories which I hope you will find inspirational. Because you see, yes, all this is good to know, but what do each one of us do? We individually have to walk through this seeming darkness, of the world around us. So the first story is about Commodore Vasily Arkhipov. It happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, the Cuban Missile Crisis happened in 1962. It was when the Russians, the Soviets, had planted they were planning to, or they had planted nuclear weapons in Cuba, and the Americans said, hatao, otherwise we are going to fire nuclear missiles on you. Commodore Vasily Arkhipov was on a Soviet submarine, a nuclear submarine, and they were running submerged within firing distance of America when some American ships found them. It was October 28th, 1962. So these Soviet submarines are running submerged, and these depth charges start being dropped. Now, this is a very different age. Their communication with Moscow was very limited. They had no way to reach Moscow without surfacing, and they couldn't surface because the American ships were targeting them. Other officers said, war has been declared. It is our duty to use the nuclear weapons. Vasily Arkhipov said no. And the governance structure of the Soviet Navy was such that without his approval, you needed 3 officers to sign on in order to fire a nuclear weapon. Vasily Arkhipov said no. You and I have not heard his name. He's never in textbooks. But in the history of war studies, And in security studies circles, he is called, and I'm not joking, he is officially known as the man who saved the world. Very simple. If that Soviet submarine had released its nuclear weapon, the Americans would have had no choice. They would have had to use. And then we would have had MAD. You know this, right? We are the only humans who have to live with a concept called MAD, MAD, mutually assured destruction. But how much chance is there that you and I will be in this kind of epochal Vasily moment? Thankfully, hopefully not. But let's look at my friend David Hartsoe. I've done an Ahimsa conversation with him. Late David, we lost him 2 years ago. David was 20 years old when Martin Luther King and the whole civil rights movement was in full form, Montgomery, Alabama. Right? This was the struggle against racism. Now, David himself was Caucasian, but he felt so moved that he must join this struggle for justice, so he went. And he was sitting on a lunch counter. So this was one form of protest, that African American people would sit at counters at which they were not allowed, and the people on the other side, who were all Caucasian, would refuse to serve them. And this was the satyagraha, कि वो peacefully दिन भर बैठते थे, knowing that they will not be served any food or drink. So David had joined this group when he felt a knife poking here, and a voice behind him saying, "Get out of this store." It was a store in which this cafe was located. "Get out in 2 seconds, otherwise I'm going to drive this into your heart." And if you, it's there in his conversation. David said, I mean, now he's looking back 60 years later, right? This is, I figured I have 2 seconds to decide whether I really believe in nonviolence. Huh. And then he says, I saw that man's hand was shaking. The hand that was holding the knife. ऐसा वो nervousness में होता ना. So he says, I said to him, brother, you must do what you have to do. But I want you to know that I will still try to love you. The knife fell. His would-be murderer turned around and walked away. Yes, David could have died that day. There have been countless non-violent soldiers who have died in such situations also. But I suspect that their numbers are lesser than the soldiers who have died with guns in their hands. David went on not only to live to tell this tale, he founded the Non-Violent Peace Force, which actually is a thriving organization today. They are physically working in places like Sudan, where, there's a very long-going, ongoing, sad civil war, and Ukraine. And they get into the situations with the local civilians and try to find whatever small solutions they can. I mean, that's also an Ahimsa conversation with the current head of this organization, Tiffany. And Tiffany says, it's crazy. Sometimes you're sitting across the table with the guy. She said, I think of him as the genocidal general. I mean, he could be a state actor, he could be a non-state actor. And suddenly, you find something that touches him. You find some common thread. And it's not magic, she said. It doesn't suddenly solve everything. No. But it creates an opening in which all kinds of possibilities come alive that were not there till you stopped and talked to the guy. And this comes from the willingness to listen for the concern behind the complaint. See, it's very natural. Somebody says something really obnoxious, filled with hate and ugliness or whatever. And we feel very, "Arey yaar, ye kya hai?" kind of feeling we get. And we immediately return the same feelings towards that person. That's the problem. If we can pause and try to get behind and find the reason why that person is behaving as he is, then there are endless possibilities, because this, my friends, is Swaraj. Swa, self, Raj, rule, money, rule over myself, truly. And so that's the question I leave you with. Are we more powerful when, like for example, if my friend Mr. X had gone and boxed that fellow, would then my friend have been more powerful? Or was he more powerful by doing namaste, touching that fellow's feet and walking back and keeping the peace? It's a question I leave you with. And I'll close by remembering one of my favorite Bollywood poets, Shailendra Saab. तू जिंदा है, तू जिंदगी की जीत में यकीन कर, अगर कहीं है स्वर्ग तो उतार ला जमीन पर. From my friend Leah Diskin, who has done decades of work of the kind that I don't have time to tell you about. Suffice to say, I'm proud to say that the Indian government has honored her with a Padma Shri for her work on nonviolent resolutions out there in Brazil. Violence, says Leah, violence is not a destiny, it's a choice. Thank you.